The announcement of Carnival at the end of days has already ignited fervent discussions throughout the film industry, not just for its daring concept, but for the reinvention it symbolizes for Johnny Depp. At the center of Terry Gilliam's new cinematic vision is a narrative inversion as bold as it is provocative. Casting Depp as Satan, a character long relegated to the realm of absolute evil, is a deliberate subversion meant to challenge audiences' preconceived notions of good. An evil order and chaos. Gilliam's Satan is not the monstrous embodiment of malice, but a tragic, complex figure driven by a need for redemption and understanding. In an era riddled with environmental collapse, social fragmentation, and moral ambiguity, this Satan becomes a mirror for humanity's own fallibility, acting not as a destroyer, but as an unlikely guardian fighting against divine retribution. Gilliam's distinctive touch is immediately apparent in the film's early concept art and development teasers. His commitment to surrealist dystopian world-building promises a richly layered visual experience, drawing parallels with his earlier masterpieces while also venturing into new thematic terrain. The plot hinges on a celestial schism. God, weary and embittered by humanity's endless failures, resolves to end creation altogether. In a shocking twist of spiritual irony, it's Satan who sees value in the human race and resolves to halt the apocalypse. This narrative framework allows Gilliam to explore profound philosophical questions about faith, free will, and forgiveness, themes that resonate deeply in an increasingly polarized and cynical world. Depp's casting is not only artistically daring, but deeply symbolic. Having endured a tumultuous fall from Hollywood grace, he brings a personal dimension to the role that few other actors could offer. In recent years, Depp has seen his reputation and livelihood nearly obliterated by scandal, court battles, and a cultural landscape quick to exile. Yet throughout this ordeal, he maintained a small but fiercely loyal fanbase and continued to pursue art, even if far from the Hollywood spotlight. His turn as King Louis XV in Jean du Barry marked a cautious return, but Carnival at the end of days is altogether different. It is bold, unapologetic, and defiantly imaginative. For Depp, portraying a figure as misunderstood and maligned as Satan isn't just a professional challenge, it's an existential parallel. The film invites viewers to reconsider who the real villains and heroes are, both on-screen and off, and in doing so, mirrors Depp's own journey through condemnation and perhaps redemption. The narrative structure of Carnival at the end of days promises to be as intricate and allegorical as anything Gilliam has attempted, offering fertile ground for Depp's most ambitious performance in years. The film's universe, a nightmarish, surrealist carnival that functions both as a setting and a metaphor, reflects the fractured state of humanity. Within this grotesque landscape, Satan becomes both a guide and a participant, traversing through vignettes that showcase the full spectrum of human depravity and virtue. This journey is not merely physical, but deeply philosophical. Each encounter becomes a test, a challenge that confronts the devil with his own complicity in the fall of man, while simultaneously questioning the fairness of divine judgment. This world, crafted by Gilliam's wildly imaginative lens, is expected to be populated with absurd caricatures of human archetypes, corrupt prophets, deluded messiahs, and bureaucratic angels, each symbolizing elements of modern dysfunction and spiritual decay. The film plays with religious iconography and mythic structures, not to mock them, but to strip them down to their existential cores. By placing Satan in the position of moral arbitrator, the story flips the cosmic narrative and forces audiences to reckon with uncomfortable truths about redemption, blame, and the nature of choice. It's a setup that not only provokes thought, but also invites empathy toward a character traditionally viewed as irredeemable. Depp's previous roles have uniquely prepared him for this performance. His uncanny ability to oscillate between menace and vulnerability, madness, and clarity makes him a natural fit for Gilliam's morally ambiguous Satan. Unlike previous portrayals steeped in overt evil or charm-driven temptation, Depp's version is expected to be weary, reflective, and conflicted. This Satan is not a master manipulator delighting in chaos, but a figure burdened by centuries of misunderstanding and mythologized blame. His mission to save humanity is as much about salvation as it is about self-examination. That Gilliam chose Depp for this role is no coincidence. It's a calculated move that adds layers of metatextual meaning to the film. Depp's own fall from public grace and slow crawl toward professional redemption mirrors the character's arc, enriching the performance with raw, personal subtext. In many ways, Carnival at the End of Days is shaping up to be not just a film, but a mythological statement, one that uses fantasy and satire to explore deeply human concerns. And at its heart stands Johnny Depp, embodying a character that is both ancient and startlingly contemporary, leading the charge in a story that dares to find light in the darkest of places. Depp's reimagined Satan is poised to be a radical departure from the archetypal villain that has dominated religious and pop culture for centuries. Instead of playing into traditional representations steeped in menace and malice, Depp is said to be crafting a character driven by nuance, equal, parts sardonic and soulful. This Satan is not just a rebel or an agent of chaos, but a being caught between his mythic role and a yearning for something more meaningful. Sources close to the set describe Depp's performance as emotionally layered, drawing from a place of deep internal conflict. He reportedly imbues the character with a blend of existential fatigue and dry wit, creating a Satan who is intelligent, eloquent, and haunted by the burden of eternal blame. Rather than an adversary of humanity, he becomes its reluctant advocate, attempting to sway a wrathful God with a final plea for mercy. This character study is set against a backdrop that is as immersive and surreal as anything Gilliam has conjured. In his storied career, Carnival at the End of Days is being designed as a visual odyssey, a dark, whimsical collision of theology and post-apocalyptic spectacle. The film reportedly draws from a rich visual palette inspired by Hieronymus Bosch's chaotic depictions of hell, the celestial scale of Michelangelo's Last Judgment, and the mechanical decay seen in cyberpunk classics. With practical effects, sprawling sound stages, and Gilliam's signature warped camera angles, the world Depp's Satan inhabits will pulse with disarray and divine ambiguity. The carnival of the title is no mere metaphor. It's an actual, twisted circus of crumbling morality and symbolic chaos, reflecting humanity's disorientation in the face of its own impending judgment. For Depp, this role is more than a return to form. It's a statement. After years of being at the center of a media storm, he has chosen a role that mirrors his own experience of being cast out, misrepresented, and misunderstood. In this sense, the casting transcends performance. It becomes commentary. Just as Satan in the film argues for the intrinsic worth of a deeply flawed species, Depp, through his art, implicitly argues for his own complexity beyond tabloid headlines. Gilliam, never one to shy away from controversial or philosophically dense material, gives Depp the stage to channel both pain and poise into something revelatory. The film promises not only to challenge the nature of evil, but also to ask who gets to define it, and whether even the most vilified among us can find a path to grace. As anticipation builds around Carnival at the End of Days, both critics and audiences are delving into its potential thematic implications with growing fascination. In a world increasingly characterized by uncertainty, polarization, and a looming sense of global crisis, the idea of a divine entity giving up on humanity no longer feels like abstract fiction. It hits alarmingly close to home. Gilliam's vision of God turning away from a fractured world and Satan emerging as its last defender may serve as a bold allegory for the disillusionment many feel toward traditional power structures, religious orthodoxy, and failing institutions. In portraying the devil as the lone figure still willing to fight for mankind, the film reframes damnation as empathy, suggesting that belief in human potential may come from the most unexpected source. This inversion has sparked early debate about whether Gilliam is merely engaging in theological satire or aiming for something deeper, a piercing moral fable for a world on the brink. While much of the focus has centered on Depp's transformative lead role, speculation continues to swirl around who might join him in this ambitious narrative. Gilliam's past films have featured striking ensembles, Jonathan Pryce, Robin Williams, Jeff Bridges, and Heath Ledger among them, and his ability to coax strange, memorable performances from his actors is legendary. The unnamed supporting characters in Carnival at the End of Days are rumored to include distorted saints, fallen angels turned bureaucrats, and prophets blinded by ego. Each character is expected to represent a facet of modern society, media obsession, climate apathy, spiritual hypocrisy, adding narrative weight to Satan's journey through the chaotic remnants of civilization. Though casting details remain. Under wraps, industry chatter suggests Gilliam is assembling a group as daring as the concept itself. Behind the scenes, momentum for the film appears to be strong. Set to begin production later this year, the project has reportedly secured full funding, a rare feat for a director known for budget overruns and creative clashes with studios. This stability is seen by insiders as a sign of renewed confidence in Gilliam's vision and a testament to the powerful narrative draw of Depp's return. For Gilliam, this could be a defining final statement. Now in his 80s and weathered by decades of artistic struggle, the director seems poised to channel all his thematic obsessions: spiritual alienation, institutional absurdity, the fragility of truth, into what could become his magnum opus. In that sense, Carnival at the End of Days is not just a film about the end of the world. It's a reflection on everything that has come before it, viewed through the lens of one of cinema's most visionary minds. The cultural implications of Carnival at the End of Days stretch far beyond the screen. At its core, the film engages in a bold interrogation of narrative ownership: who gets to write history, who defines good and evil, and how deeply we're conditioned to accept those definitions. In today's media-saturated, post-truth society, traditional binaries are being upended across all spheres: politics, religion, gender, identity, and Gilliam's decision to recast Satan as the unlikely redeemer serves as a direct challenge to the very foundations of conventional morality. It asks audiences to reconsider not just what they believe, but why they believe it. By embracing moral ambiguity, the film forces a confrontation with the gray areas of existence, where even the most reviled figure in Judeo-Christian mythology can emerge as a symbol of resistance, compassion, and enduring belief in flawed humanity. This inversion resonates powerfully in a cultural climate increasingly skeptical of institutional authority. With growing disenchantment toward government, religious institutions, and even the entertainment industry itself, Gilliam's subversive approach feels not just timely, but necessary. He dares viewers to imagine a world where the supposed villains are more honest, more human, and perhaps more empathetic than the gods or systems they oppose. In doing so, Carnival at the End of Days becomes a mirror held up to society's deepest contradictions, a piece of myth-making that doesn't seek to preach but to provoke. It reminds us that morality is not a fixed point on a compass, but a fluid negotiation between context, choice, and consequence. Johnny Depp's participation in such a film also serves as a cultural flashpoint. Having been vilified, vindicated, and re-examined in the public eye, Depp's own story mirrors the very arc of redemption the film explores. His portrayal of Satan, once considered irredeemable, now seeking understanding and purpose, becomes a layered performance that reflects his own reclamation of identity and artistry. In many ways, Depp isn't just acting, he's making a statement. His return in this role signals not a restoration of his former celebrity, but a reinvention of what that celebrity can mean when tethered to bold, uncomfortable storytelling, as Carnival at the End of Days edges closer to production. The film's cultural, artistic, and philosophical weight continues to stir intense discussion, not just within Hollywood circles, but among academics, theologians, and cinephiles. The notion of Satan not as the villain, but as the potential savior of humanity, fundamentally challenges centuries of inherited belief systems and flips the very foundations of Western storytelling on their head. In a world so often drawn to absolutes, to clearly defined heroes and villains, this portrayal offers a radically subversive alternative. It doesn't just provoke for the sake of provocation, rather it urges viewers to question the narratives that have shaped their moral and ideological outlook since childhood. Why do we accept certain stories as truth? Why are some figures cast forever in shadow, while others, despite their failings, are revered? These are not just religious questions. They are cultural, political, and deeply personal. Terry Gilliam's decision to stage such questions within the construct of a decaying carnival is especially poignant. Carnivals historically are spaces of inversion and excess, places where societal norms are suspended and roles are temporarily reversed. In Gilliam's cinematic hands, the carnival becomes more than just a visual motif. It is a metaphor for civilization at its breaking point. The film's apocalyptic backdrop is not rooted in fire and brimstone alone, but in something far more haunting: the slow erosion of collective meaning, the chaos that emerges when belief systems collapse, and the raw, vulnerable humanity left behind. Gilliam's visual style, already infamous for its sprawling, surrealist tableau, will likely accentuate this collapse with garish colors, grotesque characters, and dreamlike transitions that blur reality and hallucination. Every frame will likely ask viewers, is this the end of the world, or merely the unmasking of its true face? At the center of this artistic maelstrom stands Johnny Depp's Satan, an enigmatic, exhausted figure who, after eons of bearing the blame for humanity's failings, finally steps into the light not to destroy but to protect. According to early descriptions of the character, this Satan is neither smug nor seductive. He is contemplative, sardonic, and weary, a being whose motives are ambiguous but whose pain is palpable. Depp, whose own career has been marked by a long flirtation with eccentric and morally gray characters, brings with him a built-in resonance that audiences are likely to respond to in profoundly personal ways. His version of Satan will not ask for sympathy, he will earn it through vulnerability, wit, and sheer existential fatigue. There's a poetic symmetry in the casting. A man long cast out by the industry, returning in the guise of the ultimate outcast to deliver a final plea for the world's soul. The cultural timing of the film could not be more perfect, or more controversial. In an era marked by global crises, environmental collapse, rising authoritarianism, digital alienation, and spiritual fatigue, Gilliam's tale speaks directly to the contemporary human condition. God's decree to end the world isn't rooted in malevolence but in exhaustion and disillusionment. He has, in this narrative, grown tired of watching humanity repeat its mistakes, corrupt its gifts, and squander its compassion. And yet, it is Satan, the eternal scapegoat, who finds within himself a flicker of belief that the species can still redeem itself. That inversion will undoubtedly spark fury in some religious circles, intrigue in others, and reflection in all. It is a theological gambit few filmmakers would dare to attempt, and precisely the kind of risk that has defined Gilliam's legacy. What makes Carnival at the end of days? Even more tantalizing is its likely refusal to offer clear answers. Gilliam has never been interested in tidy moral resolutions or sanitized truths. His films thrive on contradiction, chaos, and the unresolvable. Tension between beauty and horror. This one, by all accounts, will be no different. Viewers may leave the theater not with a sense of closure, but with questions echoing in their minds about free will, forgiveness, and the power structures that govern our lives. The film becomes less about narrative satisfaction and more about experiential awakening, a cinematic fever dream that lingers long after the final frame. There is also the broader question of how this film will be received in an industry increasingly sensitive to optics, branding, and the often stifling weight of public discourse. In a time when films are frequently vetted for ideological alignment, Gilliam's unapologetically anarchic style may come across as both a breath of fresh air and a potential lightning rod. The character of Satan, as Redeemer no less, will undoubtedly ignite controversy in media and political commentary, but this may be precisely the point. In a world so eager to categorize and condemn, Gilliam dares to muddy the waters, to paint in shades of ambiguity and discomfort. For those willing to engage with that complexity, the result may be a truly transcendent cinematic experience. From a production standpoint, everything appears to be aligning for a smooth launch. Financing is reportedly in place, and Gilliam has taken a more deliberate, cautious approach to development than in previous projects, many of which were plagued by logistical setbacks and budgetary issues. The production team is said to be assembling a cast that can match Depp's gravitas and embody the film's sprawling emotional and thematic range. While names remain under wraps, rumors suggest that a blend of international stars and unconventional casting choices will help bring the bizarre world of Carnival at the end of days to life. Set design is expected to be a crucial element, with entire sets constructed to replicate twisted religious architecture, dilapidated fairgrounds, and crumbling urban temples to consumerism. It will be a visual opera, saturated in symbolism, and laden with irony, and yet, beyond all the spectacle, the film's lasting legacy may lie in its ability to provoke introspection. It will likely serve as a cultural mirror, one that reflects not just our flaws but our yearning for meaning in a world that seems to spin ever further out of control. In placing Satan in the unlikely role of guardian, Carnival at the end of days asks us to re-examine the origins of our narratives, the validity of our fears, and the nature of our hope. It blurs the line between sacred and profane, inviting us to consider that perhaps the path to salvation is not one of blind obedience, but of brave reimagination. Ultimately, the film represents more than a creative gamble or a comeback. It is a cultural reckoning. It challenges the boundaries of genre, faith, morality, and art, daring to tell a story that is both ancient in its themes and radical in its execution. Whether it is hailed as a masterpiece or decried as blasphemy, Carnival at the End of Days promises to be one of those rare works that force a conversation, not just about what cinema is, but about what it can still become. It is not just a ride through the apocalypse, it is a descent into ourselves, guided by a fallen angel who, against all odds, may be the last being left who still believes in us.